This chemical solved a problem overnight. A tiny amount, the benefits were immediate, but consequences stretched for generations yet to come. This is how a miracle works when profit decides the definition. Early car engines had a basic problem. The fuel-air mix didn't always wait for the spark plug. It would detonate on its own, out of sync, and hammer the engine from the inside. And because of its sound, this was called knocking. Engineers wanted higher compression for better performance, but higher compression made this knocking even worse. The only real fix was fuel that could handle pressure without firing early, which is higher octane fuel. In the 1920s, GM handed this problem to Thomas Migley Jr. Alcohol-based fuels worked, but they weren't profitable and couldn't be monopolized by big companies. After months of testing different additives, he landed on tetraethyl lead. A tiny amount boosted octane dramatically. Suddenly, cheap gasoline performed like a premium, and the industry had a highly profitable solution. To make it more marketable, GM, DuPont, and Standard Oil sold it under the name Ethyl, carefully avoiding the word lead. Behind the scenes, workers producing the additive were collapsing with neurological symptoms, hallucinations, seizures, fatal poisoning. One production facility became known internally as the Looney Gas Building. Companies knew something was wrong, but publicly they insisted there was no danger. The science behind the harm wasn't complicated. Chemical lead is a neurotoxin, and the human body has no safe level for it. It interferes with calcium and zinc-dependent processes, and settles into systems where it causes long-term damage. In children, it disrupts brain development and neurotransmitter function, leading to lower cognitive performance and behavioral issues. Adults don't escape either. Chronic exposure contributes to high blood pressure, kidney damage, nerve dysfunction, and fertility problems. Bone tissue absorbs lead like a long-term storage system, holding it for decades. During periods of stress, pregnancy, aging, or calcium deficiency, this stored chemical lead can re-enter the bloodstream. That means that exposure in childhood can continue to affect the brain and organs well into adulthood without any new exposure needed. Chemical lead also caused buildup inside engines. So manufacturers added ethylene dibromide and ethylene dichloride to help form lead compounds that would exit through the exhaust instead of sticking to engine parts. This kept engines cleaner but pushed more lead into the environment. For decades, cars basically dusted entire cities with lead. Exhaust particles settled into soil, drifted into houses, got into food and water systems. Scientists kept pointing out the pattern, but industry-backed experts pushed back and spent years arguing the evidence wasn't solid. The real shift happened when geochemist Claire Patterson stepped in. He wasn't even studying pollution, he was trying to measure ancient lead levels to figure out Earth's age. Knock knock. Who's there? Someone old. Someone old who? Someone so old my first bedtime story was the Big Bang. But every sample he touched was contaminated with modern lead, even ones from remote places like Arctic ice. That made it clear the contamination wasn't local. It was worldwide. His data showed a huge rise in atmospheric lead that lined up almost perfectly with the timeline of leaded gasoline. Industry groups tried to undermine him, but the measurements were consistent and eventually the science became impossible to ignore. By the 1960s and 70s, the evidence was clear. Kids in traffic-heavy areas or older homes had higher blood lead levels, along with lower test scores, attention problems, and more impulsive behavior. I probably needed that. Catalytic converters in the mid-1970s pushed things further. They couldn't function with leaded fuel, so modern engines basically forced a switch to unleaded gasoline. Regulators had no choice but to act, even though fuel companies resisted because leaded gas was profitable and convenient. Once the phase-out began, blood lead levels fell quickly and the true scale of the damage became obvious. Research showed that as chemical lead exposure fell, crime rates gradually dropped too, a reflection of healthier brain development once lead started disappearing. But the transition was slow. Industry pressure, infrastructure issues, and economic dependence kept leaded gasoline alive far longer than the science justified. The result was a century-long delay. The last country didn't phase it out until 2021. Let that sink in. Leaded gasoline was here even during COVID time. S-O-S. Anyone, please? There it is again. Same knock-in for the 5th day. Yep, weird noise. Ignore it. I heard Ethyl fixes knocking, so... Wait, that stuff's flammable. There is an opening! We're trapped. Well, at least the knocking is gone. Start knocking, maybe someone will hear us. I was stuck so long, that knocking is fully stuck in my head. I can hear it even now. In the end, tetraethyl lead did exactly what industry wanted. It improved engine performance and concentrated billions of dollars into the hands of a relatively small group of powerful individuals. Everything else, the environmental contamination, the neurological harm, the generational impact, was treated as an acceptable cost. It was the miracle chemical which made investors billions of dollars and also poisoned humans for generations even yet to come. The science was clear early, the risks were documented, and the damage was measurable, but profit dictated the decisions. And once a harmful product becomes economically valuable to a few, stopping it proves far more difficult than living with its consequences. And that's all for today. Thanks for watching.